Welcome to WP-Tonic, episode 204. And today we've got the immense pleasure of having as our guest, Miriam Schwab of illuminea. Did I say that right?
You did, well, almost. Nobody ever gets it right. It's illuminea. We put a little E.
There you go.
Yeah, but nobody ever knows, so it's fine. You're close.
And also, my co-host Jonathan, introduce yourself really quick.
Oh, hi there, folks. I'm the founder of WP-Tonic. We're a service maintenance support company in the WordPress space. We're your trusted partner, aren't we, John?
Trusted as always. I wanted to ask you, Miriam, you've got a very interesting story when it comes to getting into web development and later WordPress. What was your path to web development? How did you come to be an agency founder?
So basically, it started after I had my fourth kid. I was on maternity leave, and I had been working in a regular job, and I felt like I needed more room to learn things and to make decisions and for creativity and things like that. So, and I'd always loved computers when I was growing up. So I took the opportunity to let Google teach me. Google was my teacher. And I started to learn web development. I started, with just HTML and CSS. And I started to offer that kind of service of just like a basic static website. And then I saw what a pain it was every time a client needed to change a sentence. It was the worst. I did not want to be that person, So I started looking for a CMS, and at that time, WordPress was still considered very much just a blogging platform. And so I checked it out. I checked out Joomla and Drupal, and I really fell in love with WordPress. I liked the templating system, and it was logical, and the user experience in the admin area was also, I thought, superior to the other platforms. So I started to teach myself that. And I was convinced that WordPress was going to become a very important business tool and people would need it. But at that time, people weren't convinced of that. So I had to educate the local Israeli market in a way as well. And so I wrote a lot of blog posts, and I joined a lot of communities, and I really tried to get that idea out there. And then we signed our first business client who just wanted a blog at that time, not the whole site. That was very exciting. It was a pretty big Israeli company. And then we took it from there. And then, version, I think it was 3 came out, and that really turned WordPress into CMS. And also companies started realizing that they didn't have to go with the enterprise grade solutions, which were very problematic. They had vendor lock-in, and they weren't being developed enough. And they started looking for WordPress. And because we had started when we did, we were kind of like, we had that early advantage. And yeah, so we started working with bigger organizations and companies, and the rest has been history.
No, I think that's really interesting what you said. Early on, it was seen as just a blogging platform. Now in 2017, it's kind of accepted as a CMS. But what are some challenges that you have had or are having, now even pitching WordPress as a CMS to these larger clients? Or do you even just say, is it WordPress or whatever? Do you pitch it explicitly?
So what happened was, along the years of us doing this, and it's been about 10 years, I think, companies started to look for WordPress themselves. So I didn't have to go and pitch to them and say, WordPress is a better option than X, Y, or Z, or whatever it was that they were considering, because they started to learn that that's what they needed to look for. And so that wasn't a challenge. The internet is changing now. Well, it's been changing, obviously, always, but there's a change happening that's making it a challenge now. So I actually I founded a startup a year ago. And the startup's goal is to solve a few of these issues. So what happened is, as you are, I'm sure, aware, the WordPress ecosystem is very large. So for hackers, the ROI on hacking WordPress sites is very high because there's one vulnerability, it's in millions of sites. So our client sites started getting hacked too often, and it became very painful for us. The hacking became automated, and so it was just so widespread, and our clients were paying us to keep their sites alive and well. And the other two issues that we were facing were related to speed and scalability. So all the database calls, just weren't keeping up, and site speed, especially with Google saying it's a ranking factor, it became something that clients really cared about from a user experience point of view. And scalability, if a site suddenly gets a lot of traffic, the servers can't handle it, and because it was very resource intensive. So many technology companies in Israel, like I was just talking to a guy now, I said, what did do you guys have a site? He's a startup founder. I said, yeah. I said, what'd you build it in? And he said, Node.js. I said, why Node.js? He said, security and speed. So I founded the startup called Stratic, essentially to bridge those two worlds. And what it does is it publishes the native WordPress site, which is behind a login, as a live static serverless version. And that live version doesn't have the database issues, it doesn't have the vulnerabilities, it runs faster, it's scalable because of this challenge. Like, I truly believe in WordPress still as an excellent solution. It's a great marketing tool. Marketing departments love it and they want it, and they're right to. It integrates well with third-party services like Salesforce and HubSpot and for lead generation, all that. But it has these performance issues, and so we're hoping that our solution will help with that.
Do you think that we're going to see more applications like that where WordPress is used maybe as the database or a place to input content and then it's distributed out, via different applications? Are we going to see a lot more of that? And is that going to help its growth?
So I do think we will, especially with the REST API. So we're going to see more applications of that. But I think that the challenge with it, though, is that out of the box or by its nature, WordPress is not really meant to do that in a way. It's not meant to be an engine that's then pushed out. If you're going to be doing that already, which increases the complexity of WordPress, right? One of the beauties of WordPress is that the classic 5-step installation process, right? The barrier to entry is very low, as it should be. But as soon as you start using it as an application-driven API, you are raising that barrier quite a lot. And most people now who have WordPress websites will not be able to achieve that. So that's kind of a shame, because that's one of the beauties of WordPress, that it makes, as Matt Mullenweg always says, the democratization of content creation online, and it should continue to be that way. So one thing that I think that will help, the REST API will help, and advanced application type websites will use it, and I think that will be successful. The other thing is they're now implementing JavaScript a lot in WordPress, which will speed things up. There's this discussion, should it be Vue or React? So they just have to choose a direction, but I think that will make a big difference in the performance, and then hopefully we will continue, and everyone will continue to be able to use WordPress as we know it, and it's accessible that way.
No, I think you're right. And I think they're going to end up using React just because that is the popular thing. And I think they've just already made that decision, and yeah. But a lot of what you said too, WordPress is moving toward being more JavaScript driven. And like you said, people can get started with WordPress very easily, but then once you start doing stuff that's beyond just a simple blog or beyond a marketing site, it gets into deep water really quick.
Yeah.
What are some things that the WordPress project or we as a community can do to help people overcome that big drop off where they have to really have to learn how to code?
It's a good question, because one of the things that attracted me to WordPress in the beginning was the default theme. Actually, the default theme at that time it was called, I think, Kubrick. I don't know if you
Yes.
guys remember that. Yeah. It was really like well structured. And that's how I learned WordPress. It was like, this is a sidebar, this is a header, this is a footer, these are the tags, here's your author tag, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's become, in my opinion, the default theme has become much more complex in order, I think, to prove the capabilities of WordPress. But on the other hand, I think it's kind of a shame because it could be used as an excellent tool to teach WordPress or learn WordPress. Like if you have like a really good default theme, rather than a lot of the garbage that's out there, you know, filled with code that's unnecessary and just fills up, you know, for no reason. That I think would help people learn. I really believe that. I mean, that's how I learned. And I just think seeing a well-structured site, a well-coded site, and learning how it's built is the best way to learn. I think that's one way to make the barrier to entry lower. The other thing is the installation process is still easy, which is great. And now I was just at WordCamp Europe in Paris, which was fantastic, by the way. It was such an excellent conference, and it was lots of fun. It's really fun to catch up with, you know, all these people from the WordPress community. But Matt Mullenweg spoke. He did, you know, he does a Q&A kind of thing, and he introduced the Gutenberg editor, which is a new visual editor, which is replacing the old one, which is very good because the old one is, you know, its time has come to move on. Definitely. But the good thing about the Gutenberg editor is that it will make managing content from a visual point of view, I think, much, much easier. So let's say theoretically there's this great default theme that becomes bundled with WordPress, and that default theme has Gutenberg. And then anybody can take that theme and then lay out the page however they want, easily and beautifully. Then I think that's that definitely helps with that as well, and it brings it in line with what I think have been threats that have been developing from the other like website builder type of platforms, like kind of like Wix, but maybe Squarespace also, and Webido, you know. And now this is making it possible for everyone to do as well with WordPress. So that's an excellent development, and it gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, and I agree a lot with what you're saying. Because I talk to, me myself, I talk to a lot of businesses that are kind of at the small business level. And the way that they experience WordPress is different for everyone. For some people, it's like how they interact with a theme forest theme. For some people, it's like, you know, Beaver Builder or WooCommerce or something. But a lot of people are coming over from something like Weebly or Wix or Squarespace, and they expect a certain level of, you know, you just put stuff here and it works, and it, like, you know, what you see in the back end is translated to how it looks on the front end of the site. And I do think that the current WordPress editor falls really short in that regard. So hopefully this year it looks like they're taking some steps to alleviate that. You know, what are some things that you would like to see them implement into WordPress over the next year or two?
It's a really good question. I mean, this visual editor was like a big one for me, because even though the WordPress admin area is relatively easy to use, you know, we train our clients and they basically run with it, they'll still, you know, we provide intense training to make sure that they can get up and running, and we still have support requests because it's not so, like, it's still not, it's not the best user experience. So let's say the editor is the first step in that. I would like to see maybe more attention to the user experience, thinking about what does someone see when they come into the back end of the site? What do they need to see? What do they not need to see? You know, there can end up being a lot of garbage there that's like distracting or hard for them to navigate. Which of course we can take care of as well, but let's say someone is doing it themselves or whatever, or let's say we hand over a site to clients and the next thing we know, it's full of garbage. It's like, it's that user experience is problematic. Of course, I'd like to see faster performance, but I think the JavaScript thing will make a big difference. Yeah, but I'll tell you what's great. Going to WordCamp Europe reminded me how amazing the WordPress community is. Like, we interact online, and the internet is amazing because it's the only way that this kind of community and open source development could happen. But there's like a kind of like lack of humanity in that communication. We're all behind screens and we're just typing. And so there's not that like emotional human connection. And so apparently the first WordCamp Europe, which I also went to, which was in Leiden in the Netherlands, there were 700 people there. This one, there was like 2,000. So it's growing always, and the engagement is high, and the community is very, very lovely. Like people are like supportive and nice, and you know, it's like kind of like meeting up with friends. I think that's really special. And while that's not necessarily about the platform itself, I think it's indicative of what builds a platform, and that's very unique to any kind of community, I think. So kudos to the WordPress community. It's really amazing.
Absolutely. I agree with what you're saying. We're going to pause for a break for just a few seconds, and then when we come back, we're going to be talking more with Miriam Schwab of Illuminea. Did I say it right that time?
Yeah, good job.
Okay, perfect. We're coming back from our break. We're talking more with Miriam Schwab of Illuminea. And before the break, we were talking about WordCamp Europe, how it's grown from 700 people to 2,000 people. What I wanted to ask you is, in your neck of the woods in Israel, what is the WordPress community like there?
So it's smaller, obviously. I mean, we're a much smaller country, well, obviously than the continent of Europe, but so I actually organized WordCamp the last 5 times that it happens in Israel. And we get a really nice turnout, and people are very enthusiastic, and the speakers that we get are such high quality. There's a very technology-oriented approach here in Israel to WordPress, like along with everything else. So we like the last time we had 3 tracks. One was very high level development track, and we had like speakers from HP and like just like amazing and very fascinating talks. And then we had like a mid-level like implementer plus type of track, which was great, and a content track. And people are like, they're happy and like to get together and learn. And we actually have generally been doing it for no charge. So, you know, it's like it makes it more accessible to anyone who wants to come, and it's fun. But we've tried to have meetups, and that's been much more difficult to make happen and sustain. A meetup competes with a lot of things here in people's lives. You know, first of all, Israel's a very family-oriented culture. So once people finish work, they're going home, like in most cases. And so, you know, it's hard to get them to stick around. And there's a lot of tech events in general. So like you're also competing with that. So that's been hard to get off the ground. But we have some really good Facebook groups for the Israeli WordPress community. And and Hebrew is a right to left language like Arabic and Farsi. And there's one of the team members of Automatic is a guy named Yoav Farhi, who's Israeli. And so he's contributing a lot to that whole right to left area, which is amazing for us. Even though at Illuminea, most of the websites we build are English. They're for Israeli companies that are targeting outside of Israel. But we have to do Hebrew often, and so that Hebrew support is fantastic. So yeah, so now I'm not the lead organizer for WordCamp anymore. WordCamp Central created a regulation that you can only do it twice in a row, and I've done it 5 times, so I'm way past the limitation, which is fine for me. I'm so happy to not be leading it, and so another guy will be leading it this next time, and hopefully we'll be able to announce a date soon, which I would very much like. And I
definitely have some follow-up questions from that last block of commentary, and one of them is, you know, you mentioned you were a five-time WordCamp leader. You know, how did you kind of mentor like the next person or the next group of people to be taking over the WordCamp responsibilities?
So I'm still going to be involved as a volunteer. One thing that I learned after organizing it all these times is to replicate processes for each one. So the hardest part organizing a WordCamp is finding a suitable venue and date. That's the hardest thing, because you want to find the right place with the right facilities and it should be available at the right time. Once you've done that, almost everything else falls into place. And when I organized it, I really tried to find a place that didn't charge us, because I wanted us to not go into this with debt. Of course, there are other expenses, but I wanted us to like know that we're okay. It made me nervous that we wouldn't have enough sponsorships and all that kind of stuff. So, so that would be hard to find. The new organizer, I think, will be finding like a more standard type of place, and so that's that. But once it's chosen, then after that, it's processes. Like I have Google Docs and forums and all sorts of things that we just reuse every time, like call for speakers, and then we email the speakers, and then we have a doc for filtering the speakers, and then voting on the speakers, and like it's all set up. So the first couple times it was like much more work, and still a ton of work. Don't get me wrong, but we just like processes, and then it mostly works. So yeah.
Sweet. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you and circle back to is, you mentioned like a lot of your clients are there in Israel, but they're reaching out to the US and Europe and different places like that. They're doing business in all different places. They're large places. But how do you get in front of your clients, or how do they find you? Like, how do you get on their radar?
We're kind of lucky by now. It's pretty much all word of mouth. I think it's probably like this in other places, but in Israel, the tech community is relatively small and people know people. So basically it goes like this. I need help with my WordPress. Anyone who knows WordPress? Oh, Miriam knows WordPress. And also that's the best way to get business, because you've overcome a lot of hurdles that you would need to if you like went in cold. A trustworthy recommendation means like the world. But in the beginning, in order to start generating business, and basically I chose a path of positioning myself as a thought leader. It's just what works for me. I can't do cold calling or any of that kind of cold emailing. It's like so not for me. But what I can do is get up on a stage at a conference and speak. And I found that is one of the best ways to position yourself as a thought leader, and then business recommendations often come from that. It's not instant. Like I remember speaking at a conference and then like nobody's in touch, and I'm like, oh well. And then like 6 months later, someone who was at the conference recommends me to someone who wasn't even there, and then the business comes from that. And like it's snowballed over the years in a way. So in the beginning it was slower, but at this point, thank God we've positioned ourselves as like the WordPress experts pretty much in Israel. We do have competitors, but we're in a pretty strong position from that point of view, and we try to provide an excellent service to our clients and keep them happy, so they'll hopefully want to continue working with us and hopefully recommend us to their friends. So at one point I did try to grow the company. I was like, we're going to be a big team, we're going to have lots of projects, and that was a really bad idea. I didn't do it well. Other people do, obviously. I didn't do that well. It was hard to manage more people and make sure that the quality of the work was good. So then I pared everything back down again. We're a team of 4. We take on only specific types of projects, like certain size, and we only do customized work now. We don't work with existing themes or anything like that. And if clients want that, great, we're here for them. And if not, like I actually recommend them to freelancers. I have a few freelancers. I'm like, I understand we're not on your budget, but these people can do a good job of implementing your site for you. So.
One last question before I kick it over to Jonathan, and that is, you mentioned that you've kind of figured out what your perfect size project is, what your type of project is that you want to specialize in. How long did it take you to kind of learn what that sweet spot was for you, and how hard was it initially to say no to things that fell outside of that?
Very, very hard. And I learned the very hard way of making lots of very costly mistakes. So the WordPress market or web development market is very commoditized. So people are competing on price. And when you're in that situation, it means you're taking on projects where your clients expect a very high level of service, and it doesn't matter to them how much they're paying. And you can't, or a person can't, provide that level of service if you're not getting paid enough. You just can't. A WordPress project involves planning, right? We do an initial stage because we learned we have to. Initial wireframing stage, a site specification stage where we map everything out and get their approval. And then there's the design stage, which, by the way, we also learned the hard way not to do in-house. We now send clients to a studio in Tel Aviv that we partner with, and we say, just do the design there and then bring the design back to us. We found it hard to manage the design side of projects, it's just not our strong point. And then the development and training and customer support and QA and launch and then post-launch QA. And like, it's a really time-intensive thing, and people don't realize it. They're like, oh, it's a 5-step install, just press, and have a website. No, it never works that way. And I often say to clients, if you let me do the site as I think it should be done, we could do it quickly. But it's your site, and you have input, which you should, and you have opinions, and you know it better than I do. And that's why it takes longer, because we are charging you essentially also for all discussions. Just the discussions can take hours. You know, so that has to be rolled into the pricing. So all of that I had to learn the hard way over many years of making costly mistakes. But we eventually figured out what our hourly rate needs to be. And then we figured out how to like basically estimate projects, and certain projects we'll give a fixed price for and certain projects we won't, because there's just too many unknowns. And so we'll work hourly. And like, I learned to say no, because if I said yes to the wrong thing, we all would pay a gigantic price. In the end, the client wouldn't be happy. It's not like we were flexible for them and now they appreciate it. No, we would not be happy because we'd become entrenched in this horrible situation. And so I had like the hard things forced me to learn to say no. It's not because I'm so smart. It's just because I made lots of mistakes.
There you go. Jonathan?
Oh, I thought that was great. It reminds me of our last interview with Blair Enns, which was a very, like this one, a great interview. And he's well known for how to win without pitching. And have you, related to what you just said, so have you gone into more of attitude of value pricing than fixed pricing, you know, where you have the discovery stage and you basically don't pitch to clients? Basically, you know, you don't, when a spec is out there, you don't reply to it, you know, they come to you and then it's a value pricing scenario. Would that be right?
I'm not sure what the value pricing scenario is, but I'll explain how we build out our pricing. Yeah. So we don't really pitch, actually. Like, very often, actually, even though our clients are in Israel, they'll like approach us. We'll have a discussion, initial discussion of what they're looking for. Sometimes not even in person, and then like we'll do like a video conference or just a call, and we'll send an initial proposal. And sometimes we never end up meeting in person even. Basically, they come to us with a need. We say either, okay, this is what it would cost to do this. Or I often say, this is our minimum price for a project, but your project is more complex than that, so it'll cost more. And then they'll have at least a clue about what we charge. Or if it's like something that is really not clear to them or to us, then we charge them for a site specification stage. And we say, at the end of this stage, you're welcome to take this to anyone else. But we cannot actually price this out without going through this stage. And we can't absorb the cost of that stage because we're talking about like 10, sometimes 20 hours of like meetings with different people on their team and wireframes and reviewing the wireframes. And we write a specification document with the functionality, the features and everything. And so we actually charge for that, and only then do we provide generally a fixed price proposal at that point, because we know everything. We've asked all the questions. So I'm like not going around pitching so much. It's more like responding.
Yeah, but I totally follow it. Sounds great. Well, value pricing is around the philosophy that, you know, what value are you providing the client in financial terms? If you're going to get like a 2 times, 4 times return on investment, your pricing model is based on the benefit and return the client will get from the investment, rather than
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, so I actually, like over the years, I've looked into various pricing like methods, and I did look into that. And the problem with WordPress is, like, or this type, what we do is that it's not like we can say, we will build this site for you and then you will make more money. It's very hard to make that correlation, right? And also a lot of it depends on them. Like, we can build an excellent site, but then if they don't, let's say, create the good content around it, they're not going to make more money, right? Because they're not going to generate traffic. So it's very hard to say what the value is. On the other hand, I guess you could say that what we say the value is that a lot of people who come to us have been burnt by other providers, you know, things like that. So our value is, we will pay attention to you and take the project from start to finish, and we will also make sure to be there for you after launches, so that if there's any issues, you know, you can turn to us. And that is a peace of mind value that our clients will pay for. So I guess it's that, maybe.
Oh yeah, there was a recent blog post on Chris Lemmer's website around where he dealt, and he did a video as well, about where he feels the middle ground is where the real growth is, and that middle ground is providing quality web development and quality client handling, but also the other elements of driving traffic, quality content, a whole package where you can provide argument where you could get those kind of returns, but that's increasing the complexion and difficulty and getting the right client that's prepared, because that's an even deeper involvement, isn't it?
Yeah, so there's two problems with that approach, in my opinion. One is what I also learned over the years. At one point, we were providing SEO, search engine optimization services, and online marketing services. And while they complement each other, web development and this, and like the marketing side of it, they're different focuses, and we weren't doing it well. And I learned that we needed to be laser focused on doing what we do really well, because that will make our clients happy, make sure that the projects are profitable for us, and gain referrals. And that's why we dropped that. And like I mentioned, we even dropped the design side of things because we weren't doing it well. Like, we were designing well, but the process of taking a client through design is the most painful thing, because it's so subjective. I mean, it's objective in some ways, but it's so subjective. Like, go argue about like the color blue, and we didn't have it in us to like manage it well. So we just said, no, like, we're not. So rather than try to do all these complementary things, we became laser focused, and that actually improved the business. The complementary thing that we did start to offer was ongoing maintenance and support and hosting. Some clients don't want the hosting, but they want the maintenance and support to keep the site updated and live and well. And even though many of our clients are tech companies who clearly have the capabilities, it's interesting, in tech companies, the engineers don't want to have anything to do with the website, and the company doesn't want them to have anything to do with the website, because they would rather them use their talents and their skills to develop whatever it is that they're developing, right? Which has a great value for the company. So then you end up with the marketing people in charge of the website, and they do an okay job, let's say, on the content side, but they get stuck on the coding and like, you know, there's less awareness of security and all that kind of stuff. So that's where we come in. We provide that other type of peace of mind where we're here for you. You know, if anything goes wrong, we'll take care of it. And that has a lot of value for them. But actually that service has become much more painful for us over the last few years to provide.
I just want to comment too that that's something that we've both encountered individually and collectively. The same thing that you just described with retainers.
That it's become more painful?
Not that it's become more painful, but that in tech companies, the marketing team ends up running the site and the engineers are doing internal stuff. Oh yeah,
interesting. Yeah, it makes sense.
What can I ask why it's become more painful?
Sure. So when we started offering that service, it was pretty like worthwhile for us from a profitability point of view, and also actually from our own peace of mind, because if a client's site isn't working, it doesn't matter that it's because they didn't do what they needed to do. They're still going to blame us. So in a way, we also provide the service so that they couldn't come back and blame us, right? You know, we're taking care of it. It's all running fine. But over the last few years, the amount of hacking attempts have become greater, and it's automated. So we're talking about bots that are doing the hacking rather than like an individual who's just like, I'm going to target that site. And even though we are experts in this field and we keep up to date with everything and we patch vulnerabilities as fast as we can, if, you know, a vulnerability is published while we're sleeping and then we wake up and we start patching things, there's that window of opportunity for the hackers to get in, and it's become very challenging. And even the attempt to hack the site, like brute force attacks, it sends a lot of traffic to these sites to the point where that on its own can take it down. It's not even a DDoS attack. We had one client, a cyber company, who on a Friday was pitching in San Francisco. So the time zone difference is like what we have right now, which means like, you know, it's the end of our day, it's the beginning of their day. Also on Friday's not a work day in Israel. We work Sunday through Thursday. So like, we're like available, but we're not, my team's not really active. And they're on stage pitching these VCs and their site is DDoSed. And it was a nightmare. And that kind of thing started happening too frequently. We found ourselves dealing with all sorts of nightmarish situations where instead of being able to progress with the projects we were working on, we were busy trying to just, you know, clean up malware, stop a DDoS attack somehow, you know, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's become much more challenging and much more time consuming, unfortunately.
Oh, thanks for that insight. I think it's time to wrap up the podcast part of the show, John, and then we're going to go on to some bonus content that people can watch on our YouTube channel.
Correct. And one thing I want to encourage people to do, if you're, and before we let everybody, let the audience know where they can find them. If you're getting value from this podcast, we encourage you to go to iTunes, leave a positive review, let people know what you think. And like I said, we're going to have 10 or 15 minutes of bonus content on the YouTube channel, so you can check that out on the WP-Tonic site or our YouTube channel. So with that, Miriam, how do we get a hold of you? And is there anything you want us to check out?
Yes. Okay. So first of all, you can find me on Twitter at Miriam Schwab. I'm a little bit more active and colorful on Facebook, and I'm happy for people to become friends with me there. I just gave a talk at WordCamp Europe, which people really enjoyed. I got a lot of positive feedback. It's about WordPress security for all. And I recommend that people check it out. It's on the WordCamp Europe site. Right now it's like one giant video, but they're gonna be dividing them, so you can still find it there. And I'd like people to check out our new security product, Stratic, S-T-R-A-T-T-I-C, which aims to solve the issues that I mentioned before about the maintenance and support by publishing these websites as static serverless sites. So please check that out. And if you have any questions about anything that we spoke about now, security or Stratic, running a web agency, feel free to tweet me. I'm always happy to help. So
Definitely, and we'll link that stuff up in show notes. Jonathan, how do we get a hold of you?
That's quite easy, folks. You can get me on Twitter at Jonathan Denwood, or you can email me at jonathan@wp-tonic.com.
Excellent. And you can find me at my website, which is lockdowndesign.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, lockdown_, or find me on Facebook, Lockdown Design, all one word. For the WP Tonic, we're saying peace out and get your dose.
Shalom.
Okay, bonus content time.
Yeah. So you went to WordCamp. Obviously, you know, I don't know if you actually saw any of the actual presentations, because normally when you go to those, you're in the hallways chatting with people. But did you have any chance to see any of the presentations, and did any kind of really click in your memory bank that really you thought were fantastic?
Yeah, so I didn't have so much time, unfortunately. I ended up doing a lot of schmoozing with like all these people I was so happy to see. But I went to, what's his name? Oh my gosh, he's working for the White House now. Andrew Norcross? No. Now I can't remember his name. But he gave a really interesting talk about the balance between coding something excellently and that people will actually use. Like, don't create something that's well coded but nobody actually wants. So I thought that was interesting. Matt's Q&A was really interesting. Some people asked some really hard-hitting questions at the end.
Did I?
Yeah.
Can you give an example?
Sure. So the hardest hitting one was a guy got up and asked him, so he goes, so you bought WooCommerce for $26 million. Do you think it's fair that none of that profit or payment went to Jigo Shop? I think it was called. There was like the original iteration of the commerce platform. Do you think it's fair that they didn't get anything? So then Matt said, well, the amount that it was purchased for wasn't disclosed, and we bought them for their brand, and we didn't have to buy the software because it's open source, we could just download it. Oh, that's true, but it was like a very direct, like, maybe you should have paid them too question. So that was interesting. Yeah, that was the one that really sticks out in my mind.
Yeah, he recently got interviewed after, Pippin Williamson's podcast. He actually got interviewed, and he said he's over the years he's become totally hardened to the questions. He's like,
I guess you have to be.
I think I'd imagine so.
Yeah.
Go on, John. Got another question? Oh, where is he?
Muted.
Oh, yeah, I'm muted. Yeah, and this is kind of a weird question. Like, this comes up like here in the United States sometimes, but I wanted to ask, have you ever had like pushback as a woman in tech or like a woman CEO? Because sometimes, you read about it like here in the United States, like a lot, and I know that it happens, but does that ever like happen to you?
That's a great question, John. Actually.
It is. It's a really good question. So in the beginning, I actually felt more self-conscious about myself also as being like generally or often the only woman in the room. And that might have come across, but I got over that and that helped. I have never been treated with disrespect. I have to say kudos to the Israeli tech community. They really, like, never with disrespect, but I'll tell you where it's becoming difficult. So with my startup, Stratic, I've been pitching investors, and obviously everyone who has a startup and is pitching investors is getting a lot of no's. But I really started coming to the conclusion, because we check a lot of boxes. We have clients signed up, and we have a giant market, and all the things that investors supposedly want. And I kept getting no's. And I really started to come to the conclusion that it's because I'm a woman. And when it comes to, like, people will pay us for a service because they see the immediate return on that. So that's with Illuminea. But with Stratic, where we're saying, this is a great opportunity and you will see a return, just not right now. Men, who are the investors, prefer to invest in other men because they relate to them. And I think it's subconscious. I'm not saying that they're like, oh, that's a woman, big X. Mm-hmm. But I really believe it exists. And when I talk to other female tech founders, they report the same thing. We all have a difficult time here with fundraising. It's hard for us to get men to open unfortunately it's men to open their wallets and, believe in us. So that's definitely a challenge.
Why don't you approach Jason at This Week Startup and get on and be interviewed on his podcast? Because you've got a great story, and they're looking for ladies to be interviewed.
Really?
So,
which one? Yeah. This Week in Startups?
Yeah, This Week in Startup, Jason. Oh. He's actively said he's looking for to invest in women run enterprises. He actively says that. I think he's a man of his word a bit, don't you, John?
I've shook his hand before. So, just in line at an event. That's nothing beyond that. But yeah, he seems like he's a man of his word for the most part. Jason Calacanis.
That's Jason Calacanis. Yeah, okay. Wow.
I'll send you his details.
Yes, please do.
I think you stand a good chance of getting on.
I think he's just Jason. It's Jason on Twitter.
Yeah.
But it's hard. I bet everyone's tweeting at him, so it's kind of hard to get his attention.
If you've got a good product, and I think you get his attention quite rapidly.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I'll try. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for the tip.
There you go.
I've learned over the years that, and hopefully John will agree with this. I've emailed people that have even surprised John, haven't I?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. He's
Yeah, it's what you got to do. Like at the very worst, you'll be in the same situation as you were before, right? So I guess
the worst people can say is no.
yeah, and then it's
That's
the
a
same.
worse thing.
Right, exactly. It's important to remember.
Yeah.
So, because I think for various reasons, what you've just said, and obviously you're bringing your experience of the Israeli market, I think it has become a more discussed subject. Obviously with Jason also, it's been because obviously he was one of the first investors in Uber. And obviously there's been a lot of controversial discussion about Uber's internal culture, how...
Did you see that the CEO stepped down?
Which is not totally unsurprising. No, obviously, I think it's been, obviously everybody can make mistakes.
Sure.
It's about how if you learn from the mistake and how things are rectified. Obviously, unfortunately, there seemed to be an ongoing kind of saga around that particular subject.
Yeah.
Which, in the end, probably the board felt that they had to act decisively in the end because it was ongoing, and I think it was affecting the future of the company and taking away their focus, which blah blah blah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
So how do you see WordPress going in the next year? Do you think it's going to get more market strength, get stronger, or do you think it's going to plateau a little bit, or got any thoughts and feelings around that?
I think that the growth is going to slow because of the issues that we discussed, and the choices being made by developers or early adopter types to go with platforms like Node.js, like the Sky, instead of using WordPress. So that's unfortunate. I do have hope after going to WordCamp Europe that the slowness will, like, it won't slow too significantly. And I see from what Matt was discussing, and also I got to have like a nice long talk with some of the guys from Jetpack. They were there, they had a stand, and they're developing some really cool things, like really exciting that are going to be released in the next few months. And so seeing that they're investing so much in the platform, in the usability and its future gives me a lot of hope. So I think it's still going strong, and it's going to be around definitely for a while.
Though obviously this, I won't say difficult, I'm trying to find the right word here, but obviously you've got your own product now, and I'm fascinated by it, and hopefully we might be able to chat about that. But do you think also around the security issues and that having really quality hosting and choosing hosting that really is suitable for your type of business helps in this situation at all?
Oh yeah, definitely. Having high quality hosting makes a huge difference. And to me, high quality hosting means not that their servers are amazing, because everyone's servers, it's almost like a default situation now. Like the servers have to be good. It's that their support is excellent. And I will give a shout out to SiteGround. Their support is really excellent, and it's like magically excellent. So,
well, I think the three leading ones are SiteGround, WP Engine, and Liquid Web in the US market that seem to be investing a lot of money and seem to have the technical support and attitude. I'm not defraying the other players, but it's just those three. When I'm thinking of the top runners, they are the three that come to my mind. Would you agree with that, John?
Yeah, I would say WP Engine, SiteGround are rock solid. I've had sites on both of those for several years. But also add Flywheel and Liquid Web, of course, too. They've really stepped up recently.
And Pagely.
Yeah,
Pagely for Enterprise, yeah.
Yeah.
As long as the support is good, that's really what matters. What bothered me, not that we were using them, but some of our clients were on GoDaddy and then they removed ticket support. Like, I don't know how you function like that. So yeah, support is key.
Especially, you know, on the clientele that you're talking about, isn't it? You know, when you're talking about the business, you know, startup or business to business, when you're talking about that level, a GoDaddy or a shared hosting account for $4 isn't going to hack it, is it?
Nope.
Hack it.
It's not going to hack it. It may get hacked. Yeah.
Well, it's also they just don't realise the painful experience of trying to clear up a site that's been really compromised.
Right. Absolutely. Also, like I mentioned in my talk at WordCamp, like aside from all that, just to have a, like people really need to have a decent backup set up.
Backup.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't have enough backups, can you?
No, you cannot.
You're talking to a WordPress service company here. You know, I'm anal about backups. We have backups. We have, like most of my clients, I've learned the hard way. I tell you, the one site that doesn't get, which is my own, John will testify that, is the WP-Tonic. But I'm notorious for just doing changes, but I've learned I've got a lot better on that. And we're with WP Engine, and they've been fantastic, haven't they, John?
WP Engine has been really, they've been really good. Like I said, I can't remember I think I know who we were hosting with before, but yeah, they've been really good. But I agree with you. What do you think? Bonus content about it in here?
Pardon?
Do we have one more question or?
You do it, John. You got one more final question, then we call it a day.
I would just say, like, you know, what advice would you give younger agencies that are trying to build up their clientele?
Like what you need to aim for is getting to a position where you can charge enough. And like I said, it's a commodity type of market. And really, in my opinion, the best way to do it is to become a thought leader. So like your CEO or someone on that level should start blogging regularly. Take every opportunity to speak at a relevant event. Go on podcasts, you know, go on.
Have a leading WordPress podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Go on the podcast, go online webinars, like find those opportunities to position yourself as a thought leader. Organize events, by the way, it's a really good way to become like the leader in your community. It's so valuable. It will increase tremendously your ability to charge and get compensated as you should in order to provide a good service. So that's my biggest recommendation, like aim for that.
Oh, thank you so much for that insight. I think we've had recently, I was saying to John, we've had some fantastic guests on, and I say from the heart, you're also been a fantastic guest as well. If you look at the interviews we've done recently, I think we've, through our guests, we've offered some amazing insights to the WordPress community.
That's amazing. Good for you for doing this. Really, I'm so impressed. This is like episode 200 and whatever, right?
204.
Talk about longevity. I'm so impressed.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Well,
you just keep plugging away.
We keep really but we've had some great guests lately. It's been fantastic, John. So we're going to wrap this up, folks. Like I say, remember to give us a review on iTunes. We have actually recently had a couple. I'm going to dig in, and if they're amusing, I'm actually going to do a shout out. We've had a couple, and it really does help the show, folks. Also, we're going to be doing new stuff on YouTube. I'm going to be having, which I'm going to do probably this afternoon or tomorrow, have a thing about the page builders. I've written a very extensive article, reviewed the free leading. One of them comes from Israel, actually.
Elementor?
Yes.
Yes, they were also at WordCamp Europe.
Oh, do you know the crew at all?
Yes, quite well. They're good guys.
All right, so I've written that, and go and have a read of that. And there's also a competition, and you can win one of those page builders if you enter the competition. So we'll see you next week, folks. Bye.